Baseball card advice for beginners. Part 2, Silver Chatting
What is up, everybody? So I am doing a baseball card collecting advice video part 2. If you haven't seen part 1, I will put a link to it below. But just to get right into it, so I'm going to give you guys 10 tips. And these are tips that are really more geared towards beginning collectors, people that are new to the hobby, or someone like me that collected in the 80s, early 90s, and then sort of rediscovered the hobby. There's a lot to take in. So again, you can click below for part 1. This is going to be part 2. So I'm going to get right into it. Just to tell you guys my story. When I first started collecting, I wanted to get a Babe Ruth baseball card. I've always wanted a Babe Ruth baseball card, but I only had about $400 to $500 to spend. And that brings me to tip number 1, which is if it's too good to be true, it probably is. I was looking for a card like this. I was looking up the 48 leaf Babe Ruth, a card that I had always wanted. But you can see here that a card like this is going to cost you $2,500. And I didn't have the budget for that. I had about $400 to $500 to spend. So what I started to do is look at what other options are out there in terms of getting a 48 leaf? Is there a way for me to, cut a corner and save myself some money? So what I started to notice was that if a card wasn't graded, that it would sell for a lot less. So what I thought in my head was, you know what, maybe what I'll do is I'll buy it, I'll take the risk. I know that I'm taking a risk that it might not be real, but I'll get it graded and save myself a bunch of money. A card like this, let's say it's selling for $300. There's all these people watching it. It looks like it's a legit card. You say to yourself, well, I could spend $2,500 or I could take the risk of buying this card and then getting it graded myself. What I'm going to tell you guys today is 99.9% of the time, these cards are 100% fake. And not only that, but the person that's selling it knows that it's a fake. And you can see here, this is a perfect, I love this example, even though it only sold for 11 bucks. I don't think this guy really fooled anybody. But this was a card that looks sort of legit. Obviously, it's not graded. But what these people do, and this is a perfect example. This is the spiel all the time. I was fortunate enough to purchase an entire lot of baseball cards. I have no idea what's in it. It was my father's. I'm not an expert, so I'm selling this card and any other cards in the collection as reprints as per eBay regulations. So what they do is first they tell you that they have no idea how they acquired it. Oh, they acquired it from their dad, or they bought a lot. They don't know where the card is coming from, and they are going to sell it as a reprint. But they're only doing that because they don't know whether it's real or not. So the reason why they do that is so that they don't have any liability. And the interesting, the scary thing about baseball cards is it's a completely unregulated market. There's no SEC. eBay doesn't do anything to help out the buyer except for side with them if the description is inaccurate. But this guy is covering all of his bases. He's saying that I don't know where I got it from. I'm going to sell it as a reprint. So that way, if a buyer comes back and says this is a fake, they go, well, I sold it as a reprint. So I just want to show you guys another example. So this is a 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle. This is an auction that has 9 watchers. It has 34 bids and still has 4 days left. It's already bid up to $200. I'm telling you right now, this is a live card that you could buy on eBay right now. There's no way. I 100% guarantee you that this is 100% fake. There is no way that, first of all, why would you sell a 52 Topps Mickey Mantle card Here's the example. Found these baseball cards while going through my dad's old things. Wow, big surprise. I don't know much about baseball cards, so I'm just listing it on eBay. I just found a 52 Topps Mickey Mantle. I have no idea if it's real. I don't even want to bother doing the research for a card that could be worth tens of thousands of dollars, and I'm just going to put it on eBay. And second of all, there's no way that cards don't age like this. This is, I mean, unless you've been collecting for a long time, you might not be able to tell, but cards just don't. Look at the back of this card. This guy went way out of his way to make it as fake looking as possible. Another thing that I want to mention here is you have to be careful of artificial demand. This is a perfect example. Jose Uribe. This is one of those cards. This is like the over-the-top example. For whatever reason, people on eBay that sell baseball cards have made the 1990 Fleer Jose Uribe a card that they've just created this ridiculous artificial demand related to it. Just to show you an example, I literally went into my baseball cards last night. That's just a fuzzy thing there, whatever. But and this is not rare. I went into my old cards, into a box of 1990 Fleer, which is completely worthless, and pulled that card out. It is not a $525,000 card. The funny thing is that there's 79 people watching this card. The one thing is, obviously, I don't think anyone's going to spend $500,000 without doing a little bit of research, but they might be willing to spend a couple $100 without doing a lot of research, or $50 without doing a lot of research. I'll tell you what I've told you guys before. If you're going to buy a card, and if you're brand new to the hobby, the best thing to do is to do your research. If you go on eBay, look for a card. Like, this card is very specific. 1989 Upper Deck, Griffey Jr. in a PSA 9, a very iconic card. Look at the sold listings. Make sure that you get a feel. So this one has 266 results. So you can get a feel for what does this card sell for. So this card sold for 60, sold for 58, 78, 57, 72, 71, 67, 104. Some reason somebody overpaid for this card. $70, 62. So, if I'm buying this card, I'm not spending more than $60 on it. I'm probably looking to spend under 60 bucks. But the nice thing is that if you have a card, if you can be very specific with it, look at the sold listing, see how much it's going for before making a big purchase, especially if you're new to the hobby, because you don't want to way overpay for a card, because then you feel like you've been used if you end up spending way too much money for a card that is really not worth that much. All right, guys, so the next question I wanted to answer, which is almost an impossible question to answer because it's just so generic, but I'll try to answer it anyway, is should I get my card graded? And just to recap, and I know I did this in the previous video, but the three companies I would go with: SGC for anything before 1950. Anything after 1990, you can go with Beckett or BGS, and then they do a grade, they do subgrades, and they do an autograph grade, which I really, really think is cool. And I feel like the cards are really, really safe in their holder. And then finally, there's PSA, which is really the premier grading company. And the beauty of PSA is that they hold their value, whether it be cards from the 1800s all the way up to modern day. They all hold their value on the secondary market. The first question I like to ask myself, obviously, is do I just want to get the card graded just because I look like some cards, they just look so good in the holder, and it's a great way to protect your card. So that might be reason enough to get a card graded. But beyond that, if you're just kind of asking yourself in terms of whether it's worth it or not, sometimes, what I like to do, obviously the first thing you want to do is take a close look at the card, take a look at, the centering, the edges. One of the things that people always kind of forget is the surface. This particular card, this is Phil Rizzuto card, you can't even pick it up, but go like this in the light and see if there's any, especially with vintage cards, see if there's any surface issues. You know, this one looks like it's in pretty good condition except for the surface issues. And then with modern cards, same thing. Just take a very close look at it. If there's any dark areas, that's something to pay attention to. If it's got like, sometimes it'll show a little bit of white, especially in the darker areas. So just, you know, some things to keep in mind. One of the things I like to look at are, what are my odds? So, you know, this, the population report, so this is a PSA's population report, which, by the way, is available to anybody. You don't need to be a member of PSA in order to look at the pop reports. And you can see here, I looked up a very generic 1987 baseball cards. And you can see here, total population, 356,000 cards, of which 72,000 were graded a Gem Mint 10. So what that says to me is that there were 350,000 cards submitted from 1987, and only 20% of those cards came back as a PSA 10. Whereas, you know, cards from 2017, so obviously these are all cards that were probably submitted very recently. So you have 152,000 and 117,000 were PSA 10. So in other words, 77% graded a PSA 10. That's just something that you want to think about. You know, if I'm going to submit this card, there is, you know, assuming everything looks like it's in pretty good shape, there is a 77% chance that I'm going to get a PSA 10. So you think about it and you go, okay, well, this is a $5 card. In a PSA 10, it's worth 30 bucks. So, you know, and it's going to cost me $15 to get it graded. I have a 77% chance of getting a PSA 10. So all of those factors should kind of come into play in terms of whether or not you should get the card graded. One of the examples that I love to point out, this is the 1989 score traded. Ken Griffey Jr. in a PSA 10 goes for about 30 bucks. And you can see here, if you submit a raw Ken Griffey Jr., there were 24,000 submitted, 3,429 of those got graded a PSA 10. So in other words, 14%. You have a 14% chance of getting a PSA 10, and the card sells for 30 bucks. So my point is, this is a perfect example of a card that is, it's much better. Just go ahead and buy. If you want a Griffey Jr. 1989 score in a PSA 10, just buy it in a PSA 10. Don't go through the trouble of buying the card, sending it in, you know, dealing with shipping and handling, spending almost $20 just to get it graded. And then you have a 14% chance of getting a PSA 10 anyway. You're much better off just buying it in a PSA 10. So those are the things you should be thinking about when you're looking to get a card graded. Is it worth it? Do I just want to get it graded because I like the way it looks? So just I know those are very generic answers, but you know, those are some of the things that you can consider. All right, guys. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is eSnipe. But before I do that, if you guys ever get a chance to just watch one of these bigger auctions and just watch them go off at the last couple of seconds, this is for a full album of the 1950 top set. So right now it's at 1455. So let's just watch to see what happens over the next 15 seconds. You can see here it's at 1455. Let's see. Sometimes these auctions go absolutely bananas the last couple of seconds. Oh, wow. It just went to 1863. Wow. Within seconds, it just went to 1863. That was crazy. Let's see. What did it sell for? Yeah, 1863. So it went from like $1,400 to $1,800 in a matter of like, it just went crazy at the last couple of seconds. So, you know, this is a perfect example of something like, you know, it's very frustrating to win an auction sometimes because you're just sitting here and you're like trying to place a bid at the last second, and then you realize you just got outbid, and you just wasted like, an hour, 2 hours of your time, you know, getting ready for an auction. So what I like to do, and I love this site, it's called eSnipe. So let's say we were talking about that 1989 Upper Deck Griffey and a PSA 9. So let's say that, you know, again, I was saying earlier that I want to get this card for under $60. So, because we looked at the sold listings before, and we want to get for under 60 bucks. So what I would do is I find an auction that is hopefully ending sometime soon. Then what I do is I copy the URL, just copy it here, and then I go to eSnipe. And, you know, just to show you guys, here are two examples. I had, this was back in 2017. I was bidding on a Mike Trout Topps Update Cognac. My bid, the max that I was willing to pay was $800. It turned out my bid was too low. But then I raised, you know, I ended up bidding again on a Diamond PSA 10. And my max was at $1,000, and I ended up winning it for $922.50 with like 5 seconds left. It sniped it for me. So anyway, what you would do, you copy the URL of the auction that you're interested in, you paste it over here, you hit go. It'll bring you to a screen that looks like this. And then I can simply say, you can see here, this is what it's the bid is for right now, $51. So I'm going to type in 60. That's 60 is the most I'm willing to pay. The beauty of it, as you saw with the Trout, is I was willing to pay $1,000. I mean, I was ready to make a big purchase on a big Mike Trout card. And I ended up eSniping it at $922. So I got it for a lot cheaper than what I was willing to pay for it. So it is possible that if the max bid comes in at at $51, I could eSnipe it at $52. So I could say here, max I'm willing to pay is $60. I want to check in at 60 seconds, and it'll make that bid at 6 seconds before the bid, and then I just hit place bid, and I'm ready to go. All right, guys, so the next point that I wanted to make was, of course, the motto for my channel: buy the card, not the grade. And this is something that is obviously a little bit more important when it comes to vintage cards than it is modern. But this is an example that kind of illustrates my point. This is a 55 Topps Roberto Clemente rookie in a PSA 6, selling for $4,300. And just to give you guys a closer look at it, it's a pretty nice looking card. It's not, not terrible, but so you can see it's a little bit off center. The corners are okay. The edges are okay. Now, just take a look at this card. This is a card that I got that 100% I think illustrates the point of buy the card, not the grade. I got this card for 1/3 of the price that PSA 6 is going for. Actually, I think less than that. And to me, this card looks just as nice, if not better. In terms of centering, I think it looks better. In terms of color and just overall eye appeal, I think it looks better. But at the end of the day, people are going to pay a lot more money only because it's a PSA 6. If these two cards were sitting side by side at a card show and didn't have the grade, I think that this card would actually sell for more, to be honest with you. And I think collectors are getting smarter and smarter when it comes to this. I'm not saying that grade is not important, but when it comes to just eye appeal, I think collectors are becoming more in tune with that, especially when it comes to centering. And then here's the back, and you can see here, it's just a little, it's starting to, the color's starting to wear on it. And then here's the back of mine. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just my opinion and I'm a homer, but to me, this 3.5 looks just as good as this PSA 6. And like I said, you pay 1/3 of the price. So just be very, very aware. Just because it's a PSA 3, a PSA 4, don't just go based on that grade. Look at the card. At the end of the day, centering's really important. And go for the card that you're going to enjoy more, not based on the grade. Another thing I wanted to mention, something that I've just noticed, is seasonality. So I've noticed that during the season, that is a good time to sell. And during the off season, that's a good time to buy. Baseball cards are seasonal, just like every other market that's out there. I picked up that Trout in November. That's a great time to buy because I feel like a lot of people are selling cards, kind of getting ready for the holiday season. So they sell off some of their cards to, buy other stuff. So just keep that in mind. If you're selling, you want to sell while the season is going. And if you're buying, you want to buy during the off season. All right, so another thing that I wanted to point out is keep an inventory of your cards. So this is basically how I organize it. I have the rank, the player, the year, the set, who it's graded by, the grade, and the highest eBay sale, which is like impossible to keep up with. And I just did the highest eBay sale, which overvalues my cards, but whatever. I organize my cards by value. For me, that's sort of the fun thing to do. I do, you guys have seen me do my top 50 baseball cards. If you ever wonder how I do that, it's because I have an organized Excel spreadsheet of my best cards. Now, I don't put all my cards on there, but I put my best cards on there. And you can see here, if I scroll down at rank number 50, right now, Boss Schmidt is my number 50 card. And then let's see, what's number 100 is my Cody Bellinger X-Fractor in a PSA 10. So, the cards fluctuate up and down, so it's impossible to keep it up. But it gives me kind of an idea as to some of my best cards. And then finally, what I wanted to point out is share your cards. This is the final tip that I have, guys. So when I started, get back into collecting, I'd show my friends. I'd be like, "Oh, check out my cards," and they'd be like, "Seriously, dude, you still collect baseball cards?" Like giving me that vibe. Or I'd tell my wife, and she'd be like, "How much did you pay for that card?" And the fun of collecting was I was really inspired to continue to collect through YouTube, through sharing my collection with you guys. So you could do that through YouTube. If you don't like to do videos, another thing that I highly recommend is this site called Blowout Cards. It is a fantastic way to share your baseball cards. And there's also some really good tips. This is how I found out about eBay Bucks. And it's also, the other day there was a sale for, it was 15% off, for eBay purchases. And I found out, the redemption for that on this site. So it's a lot of really good tips on Blowout. So that's it, guys. I know this video's gone a little long. Please like this video. If you guys like these types of videos, please like it and let me know, because, I never know if people like this type of stuff or if people don't like it. So if you like it, please make sure to like it, subscribe. Appreciate all the feedback, and got some really cool cards coming in soon, so I'll be sharing that soon. I'll talk to you later.